Hi, Johnny. How are you doing?
All right, just had an occupational therapist in for my mum, assessing things, going up and down the stairs, a chair,
Right.
how she gets in and out of bed.
Yeah. Hopefully you can get that sorted out.
New chair for the living room.
Yeah. Well, fancy one. They can be expensive.
Hello.
More clinical looking. It looks very hospital like, but it's
Right,
better
one of
support.
those.
That better support for legs and back.
Hi, Sebastian. Hi, Tex.
Hello. Good to be back. I think I wasn't able to join 2 times. Should be better now.
You've been on well, Sebastian?
Yeah, I had a break, 1 week break of health reasons. Got surgery, but I'm back.
Okay. Well,
Back in the saddle.
hopefully everything's gone well and will continue to go well with your recovery.
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks.
I saw Duncan pop up briefly.
Yeah. Hello, everyone.
Hi, Duncan. Tex, are you taking notes today? Hi, Nicola. Hi, Neil. Hi, Ben. So by my calculation, we are quorate, but we'll wait a minute or two for anyone else to join. Before we do that, I've posted an agenda in the Slack channel. Is there anything else that anyone would like to add to that agenda?
You probably need to pin it because I don't see anything in this. Oh, in the Slack channel. Sorry, I was thinking.
Yeah, I'll pin it in
thinking about the Google chat. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'll paste it. I'll paste it over there.
Thank you.
And then pin it. There we go. And we can take it in this order unless anyone would like to change that order. I'm taking that as agreement. Great. Lorenzo, Tex, anything from the Intersect side? And
No, so outside of like being here to support any discussion about the remit, I don't think there was anything from the ISC in particular. Perhaps as an update, Kevin, if you already mentioned it in the chat, we're preparing based on ISC feedback a survey that will run through before the AMM in November, which will be to collect feedback from the members about how the work done so far and where we should go next. But I think that's the only interesting thing, unless I'm missing something, Kevin, from ISC or Tex.
Yeah, I'll make a note. Let's just make a note of that, Lorenzo. But we're waiting for the ISC to provide us with details of that. Most of the ISC discussion was on the remuneration policy, as I recall.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, so at the start we are quorate, so let's proceed with the agenda. So I've revised the remit that have been worked on earlier this summer, taking into account, hi Marcus, taking into account the comments that people had raised as best I could. Marcus and Neil, you'd raised fairly long and detailed comments, but I couldn't. I took them into account, but I couldn't see how to deal with them directly. So if you want those comments to be attached to the version that is made public, please let us know, and we can do that. Or if you'd like to provide some commentary on that, then we can do that. I'm aware you only have comment privilege on the shared document.
Well, I definitely don't demand or wanted to have this like a minority report or something added. That's not what I wanted. I just thought that in our group here to add my comments as I missed the previous meetings. So that's all about. If a majority of the group here feels well with what you discussed before and that this explanatory role is fine, then I'm also fine with it.
Okay, so Neil, likewise, you given we'll give you the opportunity to add your own commentary.
I think just looking at it, I think the thing that's the thing that's not mentioned, which is actually the thing where I see the greatest potential for friction coming up, is in the setting of parameters.
Setting of priorities.
Parameters.
Oh, parameters. I think it is mentioned. I thought we'd mentioned it in
B.
Review existing protocol parameter settings, right?
Right. Okay. You're talking about new parameter settings.
Yeah. Well, the point is, if you look at if you look at the development that's going to happen, a bunch of parameter settings now have to be chosen for the new work.
Yeah.
How does that happen?
Okay.
Recommending initial settings for new protocol parameters.
Does it say that? I'm just not. Yeah. So but I mean, so that's recommending.
We can also say reviewing and demanding or
yeah. Well, the point is there's going to be. Yeah. Okay. What I'm saying is I see that as the next point of friction because people are going to. That needs a fair amount of technical work.
Yeah, so the parameter settings need to be evidence-based as best we can.
I think it's great to have it on our remit. I would really love to see this group of people be active in this regards, right? Because we harness a lot of experience in this regards.
You're very welcome to join the parameter committee meetings. We don't have Alex Moser with us, but I'm sure he'd welcome you.
Yeah, I haven't been there. Just want to say, I think parameter setting committee is also within our remit. It's basically a subgroup or something, a delegation of the TSC, right? And if we see fit, we can just be there or demand anything from it and so on. It's part of our remit, I understand.
Yep. So anyone's welcome to join as an observer. We can circulate the meeting schedule if you're interested in joining, and a number of people here are members of that committee. Johnny, you were saying?
Yeah, I mean, that section strikes me as being quite similar to the work that was done with the governance parameters working group prior to the hard fork into governance and the initial settings for the Conway era. And the way that it would be finalized would be with people updating and now voting on the hard fork itself. So there'd need to be a proper layout of what the new parameters are, what their recommended initial settings are, and then people would have to vote on the hard fork to confirm they're okay with those first settings. But yeah, our remit in the TSC would be to commission working groups or whatever, like the governance parameters working group, to work out what the initial settings recommendations are. and then see if people agree at the hard fork event.
Okay, so what I'm detecting is broad concurrence with the proposed remit, and what some questions about changing the wording relating to parameter setting, Neil. So if you'd like to make a concrete suggestion, please do so. And then based on that remit, I had circulated a revised set of questions that we could ask new candidates, which I will paste into the chat. We can either discuss these now or we can discuss them out of band. So what I did was a light revision of the previous set of questions, removing references to tendering, for example. But trying to keep the technical focus. And I mentioned security and performance as important qualifications for this group. Lorenzo.
Sounds lovely.
Could I perhaps recommend, if you guys seem to be aligned on this revised remit, Kev, that you shared here, just looking at the time constraints, if you guys think it's good to make it official, I saw a thumbs up from Sebastian in the document. If you guys think it's a good idea to have a vote, so that's out of the way. As you said, like Kevin, you're also reviewing the questions now for the committee election starting in 3 weeks-ish, more or less. So that's just like a suggestion, if it makes sense.
Yeah. So, do you want to take a vote on the remit? I propose that we take a vote now on the remit. Since if there's any dissent, we can then sort that out in the background. All those in favour of the remit as
Can I just, when you say the remit, is that the whole of that document?
the whole of that document?
Okay, fine. I haven't read it all.
It's essentially, it's likely changed from the version that was circulated in July.
So, how many people are present? Who's missing?
7. So
Can I make a suggestion that we do this offline, right? Because actually, then we can get everybody who's a voting member. It would be really good if this was unanimously proposed, as opposed to just on a majority basis. Yes, because that would be good. So I would like to move that we do this offline, with the aim of trying to get as many people to vote as possible.
yes, I'm trying to work out who's not present. So Alex isn't present.
Who else is not present?
Adam.
Adam's not present either. Okay.
Yeah. So two members not present. So then let's take the vote offline.
Can I suggest, though, that it might be odd to have an unanimous decision on this, and that maybe a qualified majority might be enough? If qualified majority meaning 2/3 of
I think what Neil meant was unanimously proposed, not unanimously voted on. Yes, just that everybody had a chance to vote. Not
okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I'm actually playing it the other way round, in the sense that if everybody has a chance to vote, then then basically it can be seen as a more positive solution, a more positive because we're tying our own hands here, right?
Okay. No. I misunderstood your proposal. Sorry.
Yeah. So Neil, what I then suggest is if you could make the suggestions, any suggestions for improvement. I think you're the only person who's raised.
Well, I'm going to have all I'm raising is I haven't read it. I haven't had a chance to read it.
So have a chance to read it and make any suggestions there.
Right.
Once you're comfortable with it, we'll then circulate it for a vote. And I think Tex was trying to get this completed by the end of the week. So we've run a little bit of time pressure there. The questions are slightly less urgent.
Okay.
So on the questions, do we want a discussion of those questions, or shall we do that again offline? Tex.
The questions are needed quite timely here as well, but I can agree to push that to next week as long as that's decided by Wednesday. So
Okay. Yeah. So remit and questions, and I think we should try to get both of them completed this week, if at all possible. The questions should be quite straightforward. Great. So moving on. So I missed last week's session. I was away, but Adam and Nicola were requesting feedback on the Laos SIP, and the idea was to write an ELI 5, or Neil said an ELI 6, so you could explain this as if it were to someone of the appropriate reading age. Nicola, you're present, Adam isn't present. Do you want to take that forward?
Yeah, I think Neil can also back me on this if needed, but I think the outcome of the discussion we had last time was that it might be complex for the community to assess the trade-off of Laos and to understand the consequences of Laos. And having the technical steering committee giving a fair representation of the CIP proposal for general audience can help people understand what is the content of this proposal and make their opinion on what has been proposed for Laos at this stage. I think that's it. And the idea is that to come with this LE5 and LE6 proposal, it's probably good for everybody within the TSC to have a read of the CIP and to basically summarize what they think about the content of the CIP. Actually, again, the idea is to give a fair representation of it, probably not giving some gut feeling about is it a good thing or not, but more basically explain what is explain what are the trade-off as fairly as possible.
Yeah, I mean the point is trade-offs have been made.
Yeah.
Right, and actually, the community will want to know what the effect of those trade-offs are, right? And what the likely, they need to understand. They need to understand what's been cut off by doing it this way, as well as what might be achieved.
Yeah, so that's a technical appraisal as well as an explainer. Yeah, is that right?
Yes, because actually the point is decisions are being made, right, which have consequences, but I don't believe yes, decisions are being made that have consequences. I have had a quick read through some of the stuff. They are alluded to, they're not necessarily quantified, or all the rest of it. And people are just making, we have to do this. Whereas, actually you're making a decision not to do something else. So that's what I'm trying to do, is inform people. I haven't done it, I must admit, I haven't done it. I mean, I was going to try and do it last weekend, but I'm going to print it all off and sit down and read it. But, I definitely need a cup of something strong, I think, to do that.
I've printed it off, but it's 64 pages, so I haven't got round to reading.
Only 64, okay. Okay, I can deal with that. Duncan, you've got your hand. Oh, no, Jonathan.
Johnny.
Oh, I'm just going to recap something from last week since you weren't here, Kevin. So one of the things that was raised was the general sort of marketing push around Laos and its benefits, possibly not really highlighting the trade-offs as prominently, and just the idea that there could be delays in people's transactions and user experience from submitting transactions through wallets due to the increased latency. That was one of the things that was raised as a concern, especially if there's no parallelization in the system in the first instance of the protocol change. It might degrade people's lived experience, even though it increases the amount of overall transactions that can go through.
Yeah, so to be clear, this represents a change from the work that was proposed in the layoffs work item. It's
Yeah, and that's the other thing, that our DREP's aware of the fact that what they voted for in budget is not totally aligned with what they expected from that budget vote. But this is just reality, right? These trade-offs just happen because of time constraints and issues that come up after getting support. So, but it's just about communicating.
well, it's not necessarily just about communicating, John. It's about making sure that it has the right level of approval.
Well, we'll move on to the other hands.
Duncan.
So obviously I need to read, the 64 pages as well. But my initial worries, I guess, is that, I worry a bit that, the non-concurrent linear, version of the protocol that's being proposed now. I suppose maybe it's too strong to say throw the baby out with the bathwater, but at least it sounds like it's not a scalable solution anymore, in that it sounds like it has much more severe, limits on how high throughput you can push. That's obviously a trade-off, but the thing I would worry about there is that you're still going to be doing a large development project to do anything of this scale, and then only going part of the way seems like a lost opportunity. I suppose the other, I don't, I'm not trying to downplay the technical difficulties of the problems and the trade-offs involved. I know something about it, obviously. I suppose the other thing is, maybe this is what Neil was sort of alluding to, is that if the R&D project has come to the conclusion that there's a really difficult trade-off and decision, maybe the right thing to do is to put that what the set of trade-offs are, and get feedback from the community, including us, I guess, before just saying, right, we're picking one route because we've already made the decision and this is the one we think is the best. Because I think it's not an obvious decision. How much, what's the trade-off between how much change in other components, other parts of the ecosystem are acceptable compared to the benefits that you get from that. That's one aspect, and another is the latency. I'm not on the R&D project anymore, but last time we were looking at it, it seemed like there ought to be opportunities to not so much improve the time it takes for transactions to make it into ranking blocks, to be referred to from ranking blocks, which clearly does, latency is clearly increased there. But because transactions get incorporated into input blocks much earlier, there were some designs that were floating around in discussion that would give you a high degree of confidence of finality by the time your transaction was actually incorporated into an input block. So if you just redefine your notion of finality a little bit and not make it purely based on when is it in a ranking block, but just a more general notion of when do you achieve a high confidence of that your transaction will eventually be final, that there might be Leos might not look quite as bad on the latency front as it does initially. But obviously, I've got to go and read the full proposal, so I'll come back with further opinions, no doubt. Thanks. Sebastian, I guess.
Yeah, I have two questions. Do we want to discuss it now here? Have a discussion around it? It's probably going to be lengthy. Do we want to discuss the technical aspects of it or the budgetary proposal change aspects of it? I think this, in my opinion, ideally we could separate these discussions. I could respond on some of the things you say it so far, and also I think last week this would be then already going into the technical discussion. Because I'm a co-author, right? That's the disclaimer here. What I want to say, I think, yeah, the question is when do we want to have discussion and how we're going to have it, and I'm all game. Maybe the invitation is, Neil, Duncan, I think you both, we actively tagged you on, please review the SIP. We want to have your input on the SIP if time permits. We could do it through the TSC, with the TSC, or you individually. That's just general invitation is out there. I'm refraining to comment on the actual design trade-offs or whatever right now, because this would spark a discussion I'm happy to have.
Yeah. So what I'm inclined to propose, Sebastian, is to hold a dedicated session once people have had an opportunity to read through the document. So probably not today, because otherwise we're just making uninformed comments. And then to having had one or two sessions, one or two discussion sessions, to then report back to this group. So essentially to form a working group to look at the design to provide an agreed summary report. Does that sound okay to everyone?
I think we need a bit more time. That's what I'm saying. I mean, we need to sit down and we need to go through the 64 pages carefully, first of all, right? Before we start. So give us a bit of time, because we want to make good use of whatever interaction we're going to have anyway.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay.
You had your hand raised to
I mean, we just have now 2 comments on the chat, right? What budgetary changes? I think this
you used the word budgetary changes, right, in your speech. And what I was going to say, for the purpose of the recording, could you explain what those are, or were they just a?
Yeah. So
they asked you for more money.
We can lean into this part now.
Yeah.
I would like. Yeah. Okay. Cool. I'm not that much involved there, to be honest, right? So the question is, what was proposed? I can go by the governance proposal, what is out there. I think there is a supporting PDF document linked. I think that's one, which is the big scope thing, right? But it's also big, but not very detailed. If you look for layers there, it's quite generic. And so I'm happy to discuss that, or what the concerns are in this regards. I think in general, there is the IOE budget side of things and the IOR budget side of things, but there's these 2 entities who has been working on things and asking for funding for these things. Both mentioned layers. And so maybe Nicholas, right, you are on the IOR side, I'm on the IOE side. We're happy to discuss these things, I guess. Just want to mention the current state which layers is in particular has been through the summer a collaboration between both companies, right? So it touches 2 scopes in that sense. One is a research scope, which is taking a research paper into something more tangible, more feasible. And I think the SIP is a dedicated deliverable there. And similarly, the IOE scope kind of starts with the SIP, right? Being involved in the SIP and basically then taking this further.
Right. So, right. So what I think, I think let's find out the technical difference. I'm trying to make sure that we bring out all the information so the community can know what's happening, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise it's going to be. Yeah, people are going to complain. It's the nature of people to complain. They don't get what they wanted. But actually, managing the process that everybody's informed, and because if people want to raise objections, then there must be a method by which those kind of objections could be, commented and resolved, right?
Yeah,
Someone has to do that.
So
yes, yeah.
Yeah, so the last thing we want is for people to say, "Oh, you didn't warn us that there were going to be some changes, and what we've got is not what we voted for originally." Marcus.
Yes. So before I say it, the first thing, Sebastian, Nicholas, what I say now is not complaining about the CIP and the proposed solution. What I wanted to say is that the proposed budget request, as listed here in this document, was very vague and very generic. So it came on chain with this generic description and was in parallel explained like the big Laos thing that will scale by 1,000 or whatever. But this was then more on the promotion side. So on Twitter, on AMAs, on announcements that was not really part of the voting process, or what we could now pin down as this is what you proposed, or what was promised. Now, when it comes to the implementation or to the solution phase, two things could happen. One is that it is really put a lot of efforts into to deliver what DREPs thought they voted on. But what now is happening by changing it to more realistic and feasible, especially in 1 year time ranges, feasible solutions, we also need to see and consider what precedent it creates. Because we will have another budget year and there will be other proposals. And if they see now that it is possible to propose something very generic and then rephrase it to something more realistic only afterwards, we basically undermine the whole voting and governance thing. So this is not complaining or criticizing the now proposed CIP solution. I just wanted to bring up that this is a very risky thing, what we right now try to figure out how to handle it.
Yeah. I appreciate that separation of really, okay, let's talk about the project, right? And the budgetary process, the scoping process, and scope change potentially around it, from the actual technical discussion about the consensus protocol as it is sketched in this proposal, right? Technically about feasibility and so on, trade-offs come with it and so on. I linked in the chat the IPFS links, which are on the actual governance actions, just for the record here. I have not been involved in sketching any of these, right? I think Nicola on the IOR side, maybe you had been there. I have not personally been, so I can't really comment on it. Kevin, you might have been even there when it was an early draft stages, when this intersect process kicked off maybe a year ago.
I need to check to see what was actually included there, Sebastian.
Yeah.
So what we provided was fairly detailed route that could be enacted over a period of 1 year that would lead to progress towards the original definition of Laos. But obviously that doesn't take into account any changes in scope.
I mean, maybe in terms of timelines also, right? The Laos research paper was published 3 months ago, right? And was presented now in August in Crypto 25. So the definition of Laos, right, is the only published paper is what we have now, which is already a bit different, but arguably it's definitely different to what we have been proposing.
Right, but the paper existed in a draft form, and I'd be surprised if it was significantly different with the published version.
There's a pre-existing CIP, of course.
That's true, yeah.
From 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah. And I mean, there have been obvious points of contention also on that, right? And the paper also didn't go into that much detail in terms of ledger design. And I think this has been exactly researched and developed over the last year, right? So discussions which happened on how could we deal with all this in this way, that way, and so on.
I mean,
but yeah, this is then now bordering into the technical discussion now, right? I think a bit, right? Sorry.
Am I in the queue?
Yeah, you are.
You're the first one. You can go.
I was going to say two things. I think we have to there's a technical discussion which we will have, and no doubt that will be robust, as they say, in the conversation, right? But I also think that what's been brought up here is the legitimacy of the whole process, right? In that, if, you know, what are people bringing up? If you can promise one thing and then change your mind after you've got the money, and that is seen as a legitimate set of actions, is the community happy with that as an approach to doing this development? And I think those two things will be entwined because they are about technical scope and acceptance criteria. And then I think there's two things. So one is the sort of legitimacy of the whole process, and the second then is how you do change control in this, right? And I think this was, you know, going back to the very original discussion that sort of created I mean, we need a great name for this, but that this issue of change control and the management of the legitimacy of change control is always going to be a problem in a distributed system, you know, that's what typically committees with the title Technical Steering Committee on other open source projects end up managing, right? That's what they typically end up managing. That management has, you know, been removed from the Technical Steering Committee. So now you've got a problem of who's exercising that authority. Okay, because that authority needs to be exercised somewhere. So I'll stop.
Duncan.
Oh, I think Nicholas was ahead of me, but did you put your hand down?
Oh, yeah, no, maybe accidentally, but
okay.
yeah, I had a few points. Yeah, I can go and then.
Go ahead. You go first then.
Yeah, thank you. Two things on my side. The first one is on the IOR side. I guess that we're probably out of the hook, so to say, here, because the idea on the IOR side was actually to assess the feasibility of layers, come with a potential SIP. And again, I think it's important to say that it's a potential SIP. There's still room for discussion here. So I think that on this side, at least, what has been done and delivered is aligned with what was proposed in the budget process. So the question probably is on the IOE side, and I agree that it would have been better to have a wording that would have said we will implement what will be the final recommendation on the high throughput work that will come out of IOR rather than coming with a precise solution here. So there's might be room here to actually, as Neil said correctly, I think we need to see how we deal with change management here. A second point, probably, my worry is that it's one of the many very technical proposals that have been produced by Intersect. Do we want to follow the same scrutiny of the process for each of them? Because it's important. I mean, how many proposals were funded with Intersect as a fund manager? 30, 32? We are spending a lot of time on one, and I agree it's one of the major one. But will we follow the same? Will we follow the same road for each of them?
Can I follow up on?
Yep.
So just to sort of second Nicholas's first point, in the the IOR, the research project, produced a bunch of recommendations and whatnot. In the context of like what would DREPs reasonably think that they were voting for, given that obviously the detail in the the concrete proposal was rather vague. Well, what do people look for? They look for the surrounding context, and what are people saying about it, and what was the research project saying about it at the time? We were doing public calls, and people like Brian, and we're presenting these simulation results and showing a very wide range of a parameter space in which we could choose. Right, there was this very wide choice of how we were saying to the community, your problem is going to be You know, how big do you want to scale, right? You know, do you really want to go to 10,000 TPS? You know, there'll be all kinds of like additional things you've got to do. You know, maybe let's be more conservative and just go for 1,000 TPS. You know, these kinds of things. And people were putting their names to that, including myself, saying, you know, yes, this is totally technically feasible. So that kind of gives a context to what people might reasonably have felt they were voting for. So yeah, in that sense, I mean, as Nicholas was saying, it's a sort of a change between, you know, what the research project produced and then what is currently being proposed.
Are you saying that people have been voting for some level of throughput increase and some level of costs that need to come with this, right? The trade-offs as they have been presented. And if they had been, what were these, like, kind of, like, what is the goal of the project, not the how to get there, right? The goal is to increase to that level of data throughput and to not compromise latency more than this and this, and to have it done in this kind of time frame, like this kind of,
and look at STO costs and all those things.
Yeah, and not more than maybe 20%, like with this, yeah, say a cost dimension too. And then in the end, for example, if this is the proposal, right, it doesn't matter how you get there as long as you actually make that work. I think I linked now the correct document, so I had a wrong one above. This one is the one which is in the governance section, so it could be a fair basis to discuss about. Is quite concrete, right? Kind of always says, yeah, it has this, it must have sharding. A sharding implementation is, I think, one piece of scope, which is, I think we can all agree, is not in the proposed scope right now, even with a very quick read through. And so that is part of this quite concrete scope list, right? But have been people really voting for that they want sharding in this proposal, or do they want to have like more throughput?
From my perspective, let's just take the issue of sharding, right? By excluding sharding, what is being proposed is a evolutionary limit on what can happen, and that you're proposing a whole set of trade-offs that are occurring. And the effects and the ecosystem changes and all the rest of it needed for sharding, which are going to take time to propagate through the whole set of people and get every, you know, all they're going to change the model of how people work with this system. Is going to be put off. So in one sense, choosing not to have sharding is a fundamental choice of how because it sounds like this Laos solution will not scale beyond that point, right? And then adding sharding in is going to then push things even further away. So I'm just saying before we get to this is part of the discussion I want to have technically as to what we have. This is why I keep talking about things that have been cut off, not just about things that have happened, right? And things. And I'm just saying I don't want to, you know, until we've gone through all the technical details and written out all of the seen where they've chosen the parameter space. I don't think we can have that technical discussion today, is what I'm saying. Right? But I think those are the things that the public, that the community needs to understand.
Yeah. So looking at the agenda, I'm thinking let's keep this discussion going because it seems to me to be quite important, and we can push other items back to next week if necessary. Ben, go ahead.
Yeah, just wanted to respond to Nicholas's earlier comment. Like, should we pursue this level of scrutiny for other proposals? I think in the case where a vendor intends to deliver something substantially different from what was proposed, first off, I don't think there's a real change management procedure extant. There may be one on paper in the contracts that say we would have to submit it to Intersect, but I don't know what Intersect's process is there, and I don't know that it involves us at this moment. But if we're looking to have a remit where we're allowed to have opinions, I think it certainly is one that we should have an opinion, not necessarily against, but that there should be that level of scrutiny. I think because of the size of the proposal, there's likely a larger burden of justification on IO. but also due to the nature of the scope change. I think we can agree there's some scope changes that don't materially change the nature of the proposal or the product to be delivered.
But nonetheless should be reported to the community then, right?
Oh, of course, they should be reported, but they're benign enough that we don't need to make a big deal out of it. Where there's something that really conflicts with what we were told we would receive, that's a big distinction, as opposed to like, yes, we can achieve that thing, but maybe not in the way that we had hoped, or it doesn't have the overall impact we had predicted. That's a different problem.
Sebastian, you had your hand raised earlier, but it's dropped.
Yeah, I also forgot what to exactly wanted to respond on. I think I'm perfectly fine, and really just we can also focus first on the technical discussion. Then after we are kind of all in the picture of okay, what is now proposed in the SIP, what was in the budget proposal, then we can also have that separate discussion. I think more informedly. And Marcus is also just asking here, was there some kind of publication about the trade-offs, the things mentioned, and maybe even a radar chart? Yes, this is a communicational tool William Wolf has been creating on, okay, why did we go with this variant, right? But this going with this variant, the discussion of, okay, what are the options, the design space, as Duncan alluded for, right, was wide, was big. And it was, of course, more and more we zeroed in on something, but using various priorities, metrics, and so on. And it's not like it was just arbitrary. And a good source for this evolution would be the monthly reviews, the video recordings. You would see the presentations there. You can quickly jump to the slides, quickly seeing, okay, what is proposed there. You would see multiple variants. The SIP itself should have a very good, or at least a start of a good discussion on, okay, these are the trade-offs, these are the things. The rationale section is really about why this variant. A bit about why layers at all, but also why this one and not the one which is published in the paper, for example, as another thing which is well specified.
Yeah,
so I hope this answers your question also in the chat, Marcus, on what to go by, or unless you're referring to something specific I'm not aware of. I was not around too.
Nicola.
I think it's really important. I totally agree that it's very important for us to document the changes to the community and to explain that there has been some variation. Maybe they want to reconsider something. I don't know how it is reconsiderable or not, and if they want to reconsider it. But I think we also need to be very cautious about talking about what the community can already think about these things. I have many positive feedback, for example, of people saying, oh, yes, it's fine if we don't do sharding now, if we can come faster with a solution, and if it has less impact on downstream on DApp builders, for example. We had many of these comments. And I don't know if they are representative. The problem is, it's the problem with a distributed system. We never know if the feedback we have are actually representative of any kind of the community, any part of the community. We just know that a few people reach out and say, yeah, maybe some people reach out to Duncan and say, why did they give up on sharding? It's fine. It's just that we can't know if it's the feeling of the community. So I think that's why I think it's very important for us to give the community a view of what has changed, where's the trade-off, where they are, and then ask them if they're fine with it or not. But we can't speak for them.
And this is exactly what the SIP is doing, right? We push it out there and say, we don't say, oh, these are all the options, because you don't get that great feedback on these are all the options, right? They say, hey, this is a concrete proposal. What we think could be good for Cardano. Should we go about this? Should we follow through this implementation plan? So I was involved in just pushing people to, okay, propose something, like become more concrete, not all the options, but let's find what we believe best option with some kind of systemic approach. And we propose something which this will yield the best feedback. It will yield concrete feedback on the concrete thing, what is concretely proposed. And that's, again, the invitation stands. I would love to have your written feedback on this, everyone here, right, on the SIP, maybe in private too, okay, but I'd rather have it like visible for everyone.
Yeah, agreed. So I'm seeing a potential course of action, which I'd like to put to this group. But Johnny, do you want to?
Well, I was about to suggest one too. So,
Okay.
is there any scope for writing together an ELI 5 report on the proposed SIP with the pros and cons and how it differs from what was agreed upon by the DREPs, and putting that up as an info action for them to then get a better representation of what may be the community opinion? Because the concern expressed by Nicholas was we don't know and we don't have a good way of assessing it. The best way we have is an info action. So then the DREPs would be able to confirm yay or nay whether or not they're happy with the changes as they've been proposed.
Yep. So that seems eminently sensible to me. What I was going to propose, Johnny, was that we have some meetings, some technical meetings to discuss the SIP. That based on the discussion,
that would be a prerequisite to then drafting an info action. You wouldn't go straight to the end of asking people's opinion until we've got an agreement between the technical steering committee and others, and technical discussion about what should be in that info action.
But before going to the info action, I would also propose holding some open workshops, Johnny, which could engage
any supporting events or discussions or meetings that can take place that help draft something that then the DREPs can then vote on. I would be in support of, because it would be the best technical representation and both sides would feel like they were represented. Because what I don't want to happen is IO staffers and people to feel like they're being brigaded by another side, and I'd rather it be an agreed upon summary and check.
Okay, great. And the other thing that we have to consider is at what point do we say to the oversight committee, look, there's this potential change in direction that you need to be aware of. So we can give them an early heads up and say, we're aware that there is this proposal, but we don't yet know how it's going to play out, and maybe there's not going to be any change in direction. Or we could say something slightly stronger, that there's likely to be a change in direction. Nicola.
Yeah, I do think that if we follow that road, we need to have a process for every project to report any discrepancy and go through this, because it came back to what Ben said as well. It's just that in this case, people are looking at what we are doing because we are doing it in public, and the SIP is public, and basically people can judge if there's a discrepancy or not. And again, it comes a question of other projects. How many of the funded projects give public report to allow us to know where they are compared to what they have promised? And how many of them are we looking at?
That requires resort. I mean, given that we are choosing our own remit and what to do, right? Without the resourcing, we get to choose, right? So we can choose. We as a committee, I hate to say this, in the absence of nothing, in the absence, we get to choose. So I mean, choosing the ones that have the biggest impact on the ecosystem would be the saying it has to be done on all of them, which is why the TSC was only wanting to look at core things, right? And was trying to get away from the level 2 stuff and various other stuff as far as possible, because it realized that could be done in a lot of different ways, and you could have almost market forces working on how to do this.
When have we chosen this?
Was
it in a public meeting?
This was all done back in. Sorry, this was all the remit under which everything was happening up until February. Okay, March. That was the whole point. Was there was there was this notion of core, right, which is what the TSC was worried about. It wasn't worried about all possible intersect projects.
Okay, which other project of core go through the same scrutiny of this one? Do we do the same thing for Paras? Do we do the same thing for Paras? Do we do the same thing for anti-grinding?
Actually, we did for Paras. right?
There were meetings set up and discussions had and reports written
And
for
members
Para.
of the TSC went to these meetings, right, and tried to make them public at the same time, even though there were no resources, and members of the TSC paid for their own activity to go there, right? So the point was, yes, it was done for PERAS, right? It was done for PERAS, and this is the first. Now we're in the situation a process was being engaged with. Now the process has changed. So we're at the position here that we get to choose, right? Because we're going to I think we start with the biggest one.
And it makes sense. I mean, PERAS and LEOS are the biggest. Their protocol changes. They have the biggest impact, biggest projects. They need more scrutiny than smaller things. And we don't have infinite time.
Yeah, sure. I just like to have a list of what we want to review and go through the same scrutiny for all the items on this list. That's as easy as this, actually. And I think us as a committee should agree on this list.
I think it would make sense to look at the list and prioritize.
Yeah.
I don't think we should give the same scrutiny to every single thing. But
Oh
we should,
I can understand.
but making
this.
a conscious decision.
This I
Yeah.
totally agree. I mean, some items may be more important, and we want to have a higher scrutiny for items that we consider more important. I just think that we need to do this work actually, because at the moment it just feels just an ad hoc decision.
Yeah. No, but I think there is maybe others which are kind of as important and as big line items, right? But I think LEOS is one of the biggest, right? It's one of the biggest budget proposals. It's part of the biggest summary proposal, which is the IOE one, right? We all know it. And it is also very core, right? It is at the heart of Cardano, the consensus algorithm, right? PERAS is in a similar shape, Phalanx too. I'm not sure where they show up in the budget process, but I think we should have scrutiny. I welcome it very much as a co-author on the SIP, being involved on the R&D and on the engineering side of it at IO, but also I would love to have that. I'm happy to get all your feedback on it, and it makes a lot of sense to have a look, as long as we are kind of open to improve whatever is there, right? I mean, if you find, okay, there's a discrepancy, how can we make it happen still? Because the people want more throughput, seemingly, right? Now, what is the scope change? Is there a scope change needed? How should it be conveyed? How should it be processed? I think that's fair to discuss on the process itself, and definitely on the technical side of things. I think that is, no matter what comes out of this kind of the process and the more politics part of it, on the technical side of things, the discussion can only yield a better proposal in the end, right? And that's why I'm fully for it, welcoming the feedback.
Okay, so I think we've got a way to progress here. Thanks, Johnny. I've made a note on that. I'll summarize that and put it into the Slack. I'll take an action so I'll coordinate with Lorenzo Tax or other people from Intersect to coordinate technical discussion meetings once we've given people an opportunity to read through the report. Who would like to be involved in those meetings? Sebastian, Neil, Duncan, Johnny. Okay, great. So, I'll Nicola. Okay, great.
I mean, you can probably invite all TSC.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably the most important part of our remit. So.
And it's a fun discussion, right? It's actually one of the best parts about our job here, right? Technical discussion on topic. That would be wonderful.
Sure. No, the reason I was asking Nicola is to make sure there were enough people who were interested in being involved to make this effective, right? So absolutely, this is not going to be closed, but we need to make sure we've got a sufficient quorum to make it worthwhile for you. Brilliant. So we've got a course of action on that. This meeting is due to finish in 1 minute. Of the remaining items, do we want to cover any of these now? I'm aware that there's an issue about re-electing or electing the chair for this group. that we should probably have a discussion about. But we could do that privately and then discuss it openly next week, for example, or have an out-of-the-plane vote.
What is it? Are you at the end of your
No,
time allotted?
No, I'll give you
Yeah.
the short version.
Because I think you do a great job as a chair, right? That's wonderful, all the preparation, and that's so far very, very. I'm excited to see that much structure in these kinds of meetings.
Thank you for the support, Sebastian. So the situation is that we've got elections coming up in about a month's time. Okay, we don't know who's going to be. So my position is coming up for re-election. If as are Johnny, Ben, Marcus, Adam. What we want to do is to ensure continuity with the chair. We don't know who, if any of us, will stand and be re-elected. What other committees have done is to elect a chair from the other committee members, the ones who are not up for election. Now, this group can choose, so we can choose to do that now if anyone is willing to stand, or we can raise the question once we know who the new members are. Okay. For Insect's perspective, it's good to have continuity in the chair, but it's not completely essential. And I would obviously be happy to support any incoming chair and go through the duties with them to do any shadowing, etc. Johnny.
Just to highlight that I am not seeking re-election. I believe Adam Dean is not seeking re-election. There may be others that are not seeking re-election. So if a vote was taken now for the chair, it may not be representative of the vote of the new people coming on.
Yeah.
Just raise that as a concern.
Yeah, thank you, Johnny. But now it's September and the elections happen in October and positions can change, right?
Yeah, why are you not? So we need to make you feel more comfortable. Or is it even possible to be re-nominated or kind of rerunning?
Should we take that discussion offline, Sebastian?
Of course.
Yeah. I'm not sure Johnny is willing to discuss it.
Yeah. We're running out of time anyways.
And we're running out of time. So thank you everyone for participating in the session. Said I'll carry forward the items we haven't discussed to next week. And we'll arrange to take the vote on the remit and the questions and aim to get that completed by the end of the week. Great. Thank you, everyone. Talk to you again very shortly.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.